Yo, y'all not ready for this one. Bernie B just got exposed on live spaces. Ice Spice was caught locking lips with a whole Spider-Man. And Megan Thee Stallion is out here throwing businesses at the wall like her rent is due tomorrow. Three of the biggest women in rap. One catastrophic week. Alters, age gaps, and audit paperwork. The receipts just went nuclear, and the internet is on fire. And Cardi really thought hopping on X Spaces screaming for 3 hours straight was a good idea? Bruh signed her own exposure papers in front of the whole world. Before we get into it, like, subscribe, don't miss it, nah. Okay, y'all, gather round, because we need to talk about the night Belkals Almanzar, the woman you know as Cardi B, decided that the smartest move in her Grammy-winning career was to log on to X Spaces at an ungodly hour and go 3 full hours screaming into a phone at an Atlanta rapper named Akbar V. And I'm not exaggerating that runtime for effect. This was a genuine marathon-length phone battery draining rant, and it happened in early July 2026, live, in front of thousands of listeners who pulled up in real time, and even more who caught the clips the next morning after the whole timeline stopped what it was doing to press play. Now let me set the scene properly, because if you miss the build-up, you're going to miss why this incident matters so much. Akbar V, the Atlanta MC who's been buzzing under the radar for years, had just dropped a freestyle called You Ain't Pretty, and she didn't just drop it on any old instrumental. She dropped it over Cardi's own Pretty and Petty beat, according to breakdowns published by Hot New Hip Hop. Now, if you know anything about rap culture, you know that jumping on somebody's own beat is the highest form of disrespect wrapped in the highest form of flattery. It's saying, I'm going to take your instrumental and turn it into your funeral. That's the ancient rules. And Akbar didn't just follow those rules. She leaned all the way into them. For days, Akbar kept posting on her socials telling Cardi to get in the booth, a phrase that got amplified across Revolt and every other outlet that was tracking the situation on Facebook. She wasn't asking politely. She was daring Bernie to actually pick up a microphone and reply the way real rappers reply, which is on a record, not on a rant. And here's where it gets crazy. Instead of doing the one thing every hip-hop head in America was begging her to do, Cardi did the exact opposite. Cardi decided that yelling into a live audio room for 3 hours somehow counted as a rap response. Baby girl, respectfully, that is not how this works. You cannot verbally spar your way out of a beat challenge. That's like showing up to a boxing match with a Twitter thread. And I need y'all to sit with the absurdity of that decision for a second, because it's the seed of everything that unraveled this week. A Grammy-winning artist with unlimited studio access, unlimited engineers, and unlimited ghostwriters on speed dial looked at a viral freestyle over her own beat and said, you know what? Let me open up X Spaces at midnight and let it fly. That's not a strategy. That's a meltdown dressed up as a strategy. And now, before I take y'all any deeper into this timeline, let's look at the receipts that show exactly why this move backfired so hard it might have torched an entire career arc. Package Section 4, the Evidence Vault. Receipt Part A, Primary Receipts. Look, I've been sitting with these clips all week, pausing, rewinding, playing them for my group chat, watching my friends' jaws physically hit the floor. And I gotta walk y'all through this piece by piece because it is wild in a way that I don't think the internet is fully processed yet. So buckle up, because we'll go receipt by receipt, and every single one is worse than the last. First receipt, Cardi B's own Spaces rant. On that live session, Bernie went into full detonation mode and said, and I quote directly, tell him to get in the booth, BTCH go get in a f***ing casket, get in a ditch be asterisk TCH. That specific quote was captured and republished by the Jasmine brand via Facebook, and it spread across every timeline within the hour. Now, when I heard this the first time, I literally had to hit the pause button and rewind, because I couldn't believe a Grammy winner, a mother of multiple children, was on the timeline wishing another woman, another mother, into a hole in the ground. My brother said what? That is, without a doubt, the most unhinged flex I have ever heard come out of somebody who told us on Instagram Live last year that she loves Jesus with her whole heart. Ma'am, this is not a Jesus quote. This is a casket quote. There is no scripture that ends with go get in a ditch. Second receipt, Akbar V's live Spaces response. Dropped within hours of Cardi's meltdown, because the girl was not about to let a Grammy winner threaten her, without a real-time reply. Akbar hit her own Spaces room and said, And this is a direct quote that was widely circulated by outlets tracking the exchange. You're a witch and you're very demonic, and I don't hear nobody say that it's a religion. It's not a religion. It's witchcraft. And you're a demon. Then, because apparently once was enough, she doubled down with an even more specific accusation. I'm not around here burning candles and got altars built up in my closet and got money over food praying to dead people because that's witchcraft. And I know you play heavy in witchcraft. Y'all, when I read that transcript the first time, I had to do a triple take because that is not a rap bar. That is an indictment. Is she serious? And she said all of it with her whole chest. No filter. No PR handler frantically pulling her back from the microphone. No publicist typing furiously in the corner. Cardi, of course. Try to fire back on the same platform. But by then, the accusation was already halfway around the internet. Third receipt. Cardi's flex that wasn't. On that same 3-hour Spaces marathon, Bernie tried to hit us with what she thought was the ultimate mic drop, saying, "Nobody give a F asterisk CK about you." An alleged clip highlighted and reshared by Revolt, while simultaneously spending 3 full hours of her one and only life talking about the very nobody she claims doesn't matter. Nah, respectfully, you cannot say that with a straight face and expect grown people to take you seriously. If Akbar V was truly a nobody, why is your entire evening, your whole primetime content window, dedicated to her name? Why did your engineer not get a session? Why did your kids not get a bedtime story? Why did your entire adult schedule collapse around this nobody? That line right there is where Cardi lost the plot for me. That's the receipt that revealed the panic underneath the performance. Fourth receipt, Akbar's Spaces bar for the ages. Somewhere in the middle of Cardi's meltdown, Akbar came back with a line I still can't stop thinking about. She said live on X, "You mad that you've been exposed? It's no way that only thing I did was a diss record, just like you dissed me when you and Offset made your record." Straight out her mouth. No rehearsal. No producer. That right there's a receipt of a receipt. Akbar is basically pulling up the timeline and saying, "Cardi, you dissed me first. You and your husband both. So miss me with the victim performance." And it reframes the entire beef, because now Bernie can't play the "why is she coming for me" card. According to the way Akbar tells it, Cardi swung first years ago, and the freestyle is just a delayed counterpunch. That's a whole different narrative, and it puts Bernie's Spaces meltdown in a much worse light. Fifth receipt, Ice Spice, over on a completely different chaos timeline. Because apparently one female rap scandal wasn't enough a week, we also had Ice's Gassin', the artist you know as Ice Spice, making headlines from Michael Rubin's annual all-white party. According to coverage from Yahoo Entertainment, photos surfaced showing Ice Spice sharing what looked like a kiss with 51-year-old Tobey Maguire, aka the original Spider-Man from 2002. One photograph showed them just standing next to each other, casual, no big deal. Then the next photograph showed them fully lip-locked in front of a wall of phone cameras. When I saw that carousel scroll across my feed, I said, "NHH, this is a fever dream. This cannot be a real image sequence." My brother said, "What?" Because y'all, Tobey Maguire is 51 years old. Ice Spice is 26. The math on that room is doing a lot of talking. Sixth receipt. Megan Thee Stallion, 1 week earlier, deciding this was the perfect moment to pivot to the beauty industry. Meg posted an announcement on her socials that read, "Discover Hot Girl Summer, my new fragrance, available now," in an Instagram reel that racked up millions of views overnight. She partnered with Coty and Ulta Beauty for what Billboard laid out as a full 3-phase rollout. July 5th for the online early launch, July 8th for the nationwide online release, and July 11th for the in-store Ulta debut. And this is landing while, and I need y'all to hold that word, while in your head, she's got a $1.2 million styling lawsuit hovering over her head from Eric Archibald and 6K, as reported by the Shade Room. Girl said, "Let's launch a perfume in the middle of a financial storm." That is not the move of a confident businesswoman. That is the move of somebody who is desperate to change the news cycle before the news cycle changes her. Now that we got the 6 quotes on record, let's connect the dots that the mainstream blogs won't connect for you. Real talk. The sequencing on this whole week is where the story gets filthy, and I mean that in the best documentary sense. Because if you only look at the receipts as individual moments, you miss the pattern. But if you line them up on a calendar, a completely different picture emerges, and it is not a flattering one for the big three. Let's start with that Space's meltdown. That whole 3-hour marathon happened within 24 hours of the You Ain't Pretty freestyle hitting the internet per Hot New Hip Hop's original coverage. Not 24 days. Not 24 weeks. A single, solitary day. So Cardi really thought nobody in the culture would clock how fast she jumped online screaming? Baby, we clocked it in real time. That is terrible timing, bruh. If you're a real headliner, if you're the biggest female rapper in the world, the way your press releases claim, you finish your album cycle first. You let the freestyle marinate, you let your team draft a real response, and you drop a booth reply when the culture is hungry for it. You do not sprint to Spaces at midnight to argue with an Atlanta MC who has less than a fraction of your budget. That's not confidence. That's panic dressed up as clapback. Now let's talk about the party fee bar. That specific moment where Cardi essentially admitted that Partisan Fontaine, her longtime rumored ghostwriter, charges by the verse. That admission aired during the same Spaces window where she was calling Akbar a nobody, a moment that also got captured on Instagram and rebroken down by the Jasmine brand. So think about what she actually said in real time. She essentially confirmed, on a live audio platform, that she gatekeeps who gets a booth response based on how much money the challenger can spend on a ghostwriter. Read that back to yourself slowly. That is the mindset of somebody who is scared of the bars, not the person. If you were confident in your own pen, you wouldn't need to bring up your ghostwriter's rate card. You'd just cook. But Bernie can't just cook, so instead she gave us a price sheet. Now here's the piece that nobody in the mainstream media is putting together, and I need y'all to lean in for this one, because it's the most damning move Cardi has made in years. Akbar's diss track got hit with a copyright strike almost immediately after it started gaining traction, proposed circulating on Facebook that broke down the takedown timeline. Akbar's own statement about the takedown claimed the song was reportedly removed over licensing issues, according to summaries that trended on TikTok in the days that followed. That is not organic. That is legal warfare in its purest form. Cardi didn't beat Akbar in the booth. She tried to beat her in the DMCAQ. And the same woman who spent all of last year telling us on podcasts that she can't be humbled and God chose her is quietly filing paperwork to mute her ops behind the scenes. Any real MC would have responded on a track. But Bernie isn't operating like a real MC right now. She's operating like a lawyer with a mixtape. Now zoom out even further, because Ice Spice's situation has its own filthy timeline. Those Michael Rubin party photos didn't drop in a vacuum. They landed just weeks after Ice Spice publicly split from her longtime manager Riot USA, a rupture the industry has been buzzing about all year, according to reporting from Grazia Daily UK. So think about the sequence. The girl loses her closest professional guide, the person who was ostensibly building her long-term strategy, and then weeks later, she shows up at the most photographed party of the summer, allegedly hugged up on a 51-year-old actor. That is not a coincidence. That is the exact pattern of somebody whose ship lost its captain, and now she's bouncing off whoever is standing next to her on the guest list. Her supporters online really thought this was just a random crossover. Nah, family. This is what happens when management dies and PR fills a vacuum with whatever headline moves fast. And Megan's timeline? Somehow even filthier. The fragrance drop is landing in the exact same summer that she's fighting a $1.2 million styling lawsuit that alleges unpaid wardrobe fees dating back to some of her biggest red carpet moments, per Complex's coverage of the legal filings. And in her own denial, Megan called those invoices fraudulent, according to summaries picked up by Kiss 95.1. Now, fraudulent is a big word to throw around in Los Angeles County Superior Court. That's not, I disagree with the invoice. That's not, let's negotiate. That is, this bill should not legally exist, which is a much heavier posture. So while Meg is out here telling us on Instagram this is a hot girl summer, her back office is arguing about invoices that stylists say were never paid. A 6-figure lawsuit and a 6-figure product launch happening simultaneously? That's not a coincidence. That is a business trying to outrun a bill in public. But here's where the story shifts from timeline into forensics, and this is the part that separates a rap breakdown from a documentary. Now, check this out, because nobody, and I mean nobody, is talking about the specific word choices in Cardi Space's meltdown, and honestly, those word choices are the most damning part of the entire situation. Because in beef, the vocabulary tells the truth even when the person doesn't. Zoom into the phrase, get in a casket. Read it back slowly. She didn't say, I'll beat you in the booth. She didn't say, I'll out-rap you on any beat. She didn't even say, I'll respond on wax when I feel like it. She said casket. That is a death wish vocabulary from a Grammy-winning woman with 2 children of her own. This is not beef vocabulary. That is curse vocabulary. That is the exact type of language. Funeral imagery, burial imagery, ditches, caskets, that made Akbar suspect witchcraft in the first place. And Bernie really didn't catch, in the middle of her 3-hour marathon, how that word choice validates the very accusation being thrown at her. That's embarrassing on a whole other level. When your rebuttal accidentally confirms the prosecution's case, you have lost the trial before the jury even walks in. Now zoom into Akbar's phrase, money over food. Because this is where the forensic layer gets really specific. She didn't say idols. She didn't say statues. She didn't say pictures. She said money over food, praying to dead people. And that is a hyper-specific configuration in certain traditional spiritual practices. Offerings placed strategically, currency laid on top of sustenance for ancestral petitions, altars arranged in a very particular sequence. Akbar isn't guessing. That's not vocabulary you accidentally reach for. That is a vocabulary of somebody who has either seen it or heard about it firsthand from somebody who has. And Cardi's response to that hyper-specific accusation was not to explain how her altar setup actually looks. Her response was not to say, here's my prayer room, come see, nothing to hide. Her response was to threaten a woman into a ditch. That right there is a tell. When you don't have a defense, you swing. And Bernie swung. Next forensic layer. Cardi's own repeated deflection tactic. Listen to how many times she has cycled back to phrases like, I'm anointed, and God chose me to be rich across her recent responses, including specific sound bites that got clipped by Hot 97. That specific phrasing, anointed, is theological armor. It's not casual church vocabulary. It's the kind of phrase you specifically pull off the shelf when you're being accused of the opposite, and you need the exact counterword. Nobody who is genuinely anointed spends 3 consecutive hours defending it on X bases. Anointed people don't audition. Anointed people don't beg the timeline to believe them. If Bernie had half a beat to reflect, she'd notice that her defensiveness is the loudest possible confirmation of the accusation. Now let's shift to visual forensics on the Ice Spice moment, because the actual photographs tell a very different story than the headlines. Multiple reports describe Ice Spice making an awkward face, laugh, and turned away in a disputed kiss photo, according to breakdowns republished on Hip Hop Hero via Facebook. That is not the body language of somebody in a consensual romantic moment. That is the body language of somebody who got surprise-lipped in front of 100 camera phones. Read the frame carefully. Awkward face. Nervous laugh. Immediate turn away. Those 3 micro-actions in sequence do not describe a girlfriend. They describe a startled young woman. So while the internet is running with headlines like, Ice Spice is dating Toby, the actual visual evidence points to a very different, much more awkward scenario. And Tobey Maguire's team really thought hosting party photos in 2026 wouldn't leak? That's the whole problem with these older industry heads. They still think Michael Rubin's parties operate on some invisible NDA. They don't. Every phone in that room is a wire. Legal forensics on Megan's situation get even sharper when you go back to her own words in the legal filings, where she called the stylist invoices fraudulent, according to Complex's reporting. Now, fraudulent is a very specific legal accusation. It doesn't mean I don't owe this. It doesn't mean the price is too high. It means these charges never legally should have existed in the first place. That is a much heavier claim, and it requires audit evidence to back it up, which means Megan is essentially betting her entire financial reputation that her paperwork is cleaner than her stylist's paperwork. If she loses that bet in front of a judge, the fragrance is not going to save her. Megan really is not reading between the lines of her own legal filings. She is escalating a fight that a smarter team would have quietly settled behind closed doors months ago. Now, let's see how the media covered all this, because the framing tells its own story. Watch how differently these outlets frame the exact same chaos. Because if you're not paying attention to spin, you're missing half the story. Complex framed the Megan story as a routine celebrity denial, treating her fraudulent accusation as a standard PR pushback and moving on to the next headline, per their own coverage at Complex. But the Shade Room framed the exact same situation as an ongoing crisis, packaging the wardrobe fees, the harassment allegations, and the business pivots into a single "what is going on with Megan" narrative that had comment sections buzzing for days. Two different frames on the exact same paperwork. Complex wants you to keep scrolling. The Shade Room wants you to notice a pattern. And that's a decision an editorial room makes, not a factual difference. The facts are identical. Now flip over to hot new hip-hop. They framed Akbar's diss as a competitive challenge. Like this was hip-hop sport. Get in the booth. May the best MC win. May the culture decide. Nice and clean, sportsy framing that gives Cardi an escape route. But over on the Jasmine brand and Revolt, the framing was completely different. Those outlets lean all the way into the personal cruelty and the ditch/casket language, treating it as a character moment for Cardi rather than a sports competition. See what just happened in real time? HNHH handed Bernie an escape hatch labeled Rap Sport. Jasmine brand and Revolt slammed her into a moral cage. Same spaces, same words, two entirely different portraits of Cardi. Whichever outlet you read first is a version of Bernie you now carry in your head. Now look at Metro UK's framing of the Ice Spice moment. They called the Reuben Party incident a random crossover that had a truth reveal behind it, which is a very neutral. Let's not sensationalize this tone according to Metro's coverage. But then Grazia Daily UK framed the exact same set of photographs as full-on relationship speculation, emphasizing how the images no doubt pique people's interest because of their 25-year age gap. One outlet diffused a moment, the other lit the match. Same photos, same party, same guest list, completely opposite spin. And whichever spin the algorithm serves you first is the reality your brain files away. Now, some Cardi fans in the comments have been saying this is all overblown, that Akbar V is only relevant because she's talking about Bernie, that this whole beef is manufactured attention. But those are the same people who called Nicki Minaj delusional 5 years ago and then had to eat every word when Azealia Banks eventually accused Abuela Barty, Cardi's own grandmother, of literal spellcasting on Cardi's behalf, an accusation that BET and multiple other outlets documented at length. So the witchcraft narrative is not new. This has been building in the background for years. And Akbar just said out loud what half the industry has been whispering at private dinners. Cardi supporters are reaching trying to defend this. The receipts don't lie. And the timeline stretches back way further than most casual fans realize. But here's what nobody in the mainstream is willing to say out loud. Here's the mainstream narrative you keep hearing on every podcast, every blog, and every morning show, that these are three separate scandals happening in the same week by pure coincidence. That the Cardi versus Akbar space is war, the Ice Spice versus Tobey Maguire party moment, and the Megan fragrance drop are just random hip-hop chaos that happen to overlap on. Here is what they will not tell you, and I need y'all to sit with this because it changes the entire shape of the story. This is not three scandals. This is one industry pattern. This is a quiet collapse of the big three female rap positioning that major labels manufactured in the post-2022 era and is unraveling in front of us in real time on public timelines. I am going with angle one, industry politics, because y'all need to hear this before another blog spoon feeds you the sanitized version. For the last several years, the industry machine has been marketing Cardi B, Megan Thee Stallion, and Ice Spice as the anointed successors to Nicki Minaj's throne. 3 different flavors on the shelf. 3 different lanes on the highway. All co-signed by major label money. All backed by the same PR ecosystem. All pushed by the same magazine covers. Barty living under the Atlantic Records umbrella. Meg operating in Rock Nation adjacent territory. Ice Spice signed to Capitol under 10K projects with Heavy Drake. And Nicki adjacent PR muscle boosting her from the jump. The industry needed this big 3 formation to work because it let them finally retire the Nicki Minaj era without having to pay Nicki royalties, features, or public respect. It was a corporate refresh dressed up as a cultural moment. And now look what happened in one calendar week. Cardi is on Spaces threatening a mother with a ditch. Ice Spice is losing management and getting caught in age-gap photographs with a nostalgia actor at a billionaire's party. Megan is dropping fragrances to help fund defense bills against a debt lawsuit. This is not three coincidences stacked on top of each other. This is the audience finally noticing that the label puppets have run out of music. Cardi is a puppet, and the machine is pulling strings. But the strings snapped in real time on Twitter Spaces for everybody with a phone to witness. Bernie was supposed to be the loud one. That was always her lane. She was not supposed to be the loose one. The industry needs her to look composed enough to keep endorsement money flowing. And in a single 3-hour meltdown, she gave every brand executive in America a reason to slow walk her next contract cycle. Now, remember that Spaces meltdown we broke down in part A? Here is the real reason it went that hard. It is not that Akbar hurt her feelings. Cardi has been called worse by bigger names. It is that Akbar's freestyle exposed the one thing labels can never manufacture in a lab: bar-for-bar competence in real time on somebody else's beat. When your entire brand is built on a machine, engineers, ghostwriters, producers, publicists, mixers, mastering guys, and somebody challenges you off the machine, the panic looks exactly like a 3-hour Spaces meltdown at midnight. That is why Bernie couldn't just record a response and drop it 48 hours later like a normal rapper. Because Partisan Fontaine is not on 24-hour call, and the industry does not have a ghostwriter emergency hotline for cornered stars. Cardi is playing checkers while Akbar V is out here playing chess with what sounds like a Metro PCS phone and a Fruity Loops beat. The gap in tools is enormous. The gap in results is tiny. And that gap is the whole story. Now flip the lens over to Ice Spice, because those Michael Rubin party photos we discussed have a deeper cut nobody is saying out loud. That kiss was not a romance. That was a visibility emergency playing out in front of 100 phone cameras. When you haven't dropped a hit in over a year, your options as an artist narrowed down to exactly 2 paths. A, make music, or B, manufacture headlines. Music takes months of studio time, mixing, mastering, and rollout planning. Headlines take one bad photograph in 30 seconds. So a party appearance next to the original Spider-Man, in front of every phone at Michael Rubin's mansion, is not accidental. That is a controlled leak by a team that no longer has a manager filtering opportunities, according to insider analysis published on the tab. Ice Spice represents the OLD guard of algorithm-boosted microstars. TikTok first, hook-driven, virality-dependent. And the culture is officially done with rappers who don't rap. The audience wants bars again. The audience wants writers again. And Ice Spice's team is trying to buy her another news cycle before that shift finishes crystallizing. And then there is Megan. Megan's fragrance drop is the loudest cry for help business decision I have witnessed all of 2026. She is not launching Hot Girl Summer because she woke up one morning passionate about perfumery and top notes and bass notes. She is launching because the swimsuit line didn't hit the way management projected. The Popeyes deal ran its course, and the previous ventures haven't been doing what music revenue used to do when the music was actually charting. Now she has got Eric Archibald's legal team wanting $1.2 million by Christmas. For the Shade Room's ongoing coverage of the lawsuit, Meg is repeating the same mistakes that have ended so many artist-turned-businesswoman careers before her, chasing product line after product line when the core product, the music, stops printing. If your Grammy-caliber discography cannot fund your styling bill, your fragrance is definitely not going to fund it either. Meg's whole persona is a manufactured, hot girl independence. And the paperwork is finally showing us that the manufacturing plant is running out of raw material. The forbidden take is this, and I need y'all to write this one down. The industry does not want a big three anymore. The industry wants controllable individuals. And Cardi, Meg, and Ice Spice are all showing us, in real time, in HD on public platforms, that they cannot be controlled without a constant stream of music to distract the audience. Take the music away, and what do you get? You get Spaces meltdowns. You get party kissing scandals. You get fragrance lawsuits. You get exactly the mess we are watching this week. Meanwhile, on the other side of the map, Akbar V, a woman that labels tried to shelf for years, is on X Spaces for free, exposing the biggest name in female rap without spending a single marketing dollar. She's out here doing with a phone what Cardi cannot do with a Grammy. That is the truth they will not tell you on Ebro in the morning. The gatekeepers are watching their own manufactured product implode on live audio, and they cannot PR spin their way out of Space's recording that lives forever on X. And that is the truth they will not tell you. So what happens next? Because if we've come this far, we owe it to ourselves to look at where this road ends. Here is what is most likely to happen. I'm calling this scenario 1, and it's the one I bet my last dollar on. Cardi B is going to drop that JT diss track she has been teasing for weeks. Mark my words on this one. She has no choice at this point. She has gone too public with the "I don't need to respond in the booth" energy to now actually not respond in the booth. The pressure is too loud. The clips are too viral. Watch what happens over the next 30 days. She's going to sneak drop a 2-minute freestyle late on a Thursday night, and the internet is going to drag it into a shallow grave because it will inevitably sound like the leaked snippet that fans already trashed weeks ago. When Bernie tries to escalate on wax, she is going to look desperate, screaming into the void, and the silence from Akbar afterward is going to hurt more than any reply the Atlanta rapper could have written. Because the loudest thing in a rap beef is not the reply. It is a refusal to reply, delivered by somebody who has already won. And Cardi's label, Atlantic, is quietly going to pull the marketing budget on her next single, because no boardroom in America can underwrite a woman who is threatening mothers into ditches on live audio platforms. Now, if the alternative path happens, scenario 2, and Cardi decides to stay off wax entirely and just keep dragging this beef through Space's rooms and podcast appearances, it is over for her differently. In that scenario, she is going to become the Space's girl, and once the culture files you under podcast rapper, you do not get invited back to the Grammy stage in the same headliner way. She'll try to escalate the copyright strikes, chase down every re-upload, sue every playlist curator. But every single strike she files becomes another public data point that says she cannot compete in the booth. Bernie is not ready for what's coming if she keeps outsourcing her rap defense to entertainment lawyers instead of engineers. We all watched what the culture did to Ja Rule when he stopped rapping and started litigating and started tweeting and started arguing on radio instead of just cooking. Cardi does not stand a chance if she keeps walking down that same road, because the culture already memorized how that movie ends. Looking at the bigger picture. Scenario 3. I believe this is a year the Big Three narrative officially dies, and future historians of the culture will point at this exact 7-day window as the tipping point. Cardi Space's meltdowns are going to become a running joke on Twitter, then TikTok, then eventually SNL if the show still has any teeth. Ice Spice's post-riot era is going to keep churning out paparazzi headlines instead of Billboard chart entries, and the streams are going to keep sliding in the wrong direction. And Megan's fragrance is going to sit on Ulta shelves next to every other celebrity scent that flopped when the fandom didn't convert into actual buyers at checkout. 5 years from now, when culture writers look back at this week, they are going to mark it as the exact moment the manufactured female rap era officially ended and something new started rising underneath it. Ice Spice, specifically, is watching the culture move on without her, and there is nothing her PR team can do about it, because a manager who could have actually fixed the drift is not there anymore, per ongoing reporting from Grazia Daily UK on her Riot USA split. Bernie is watching new MCs from Atlanta, Detroit, and Chicago flood the timeline with actual bars, and she is eventually going to realize that her chart position was never about talent. It was about timing. She caught the exact right cultural wave at the exact right moment in 2018, and the industry mistook lightning for a repeatable formula. And Meg? She is going to pivot to another business venture, and another one after that, until the culture stops paying attention and the fragrance sits on clearance racks next to whatever the last celebrity dropped in the same category. Whatever specific scenario ends up playing out, one thing is already clear as day. Cardi, Ice Spice, and Megan have already lost this week, and no amount of PR cleanup is going to unring these bells. Akbar V won a war she wasn't even supposed to be drafted into. And the industry that built this Big Three fantasy is going to have to figure out its next puppet before the culture picks its own queen on its own timeline without asking for corporate permission. Because right now, in July 2026, the queen chair is empty, and every real bar spitter with a phone, a beat, and a Wi-Fi connection is auditioning in front of an audience that is finally paying attention again. The manufactured era is closing. The unlicensed era is starting. And Akbar V just proved you don't need a marketing budget to end a career. You just need a beat, a bar, and a receipt. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed uncovering the real story, smash that like button and hit subscribe so you never miss when we expose what everyone else is too scared to say. Ring that bell for notifications. And if you want more truth bombs like this, click on one of these videos next. Trust me, you'll want to see what we found.